I'm Christina.
And I'm Matt.
And this is New Ways Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest with us.
So I am so excited for this because today we
Me
have
too.
the incredible Kensey McMahon with us, who I am so very fortunate to know since I was 15 years old. We've known each other since. And Kensey is not only an extremely accomplished swimmer, but also just an incredible human being. So with further ado, Kensey McMahon is a two-time NCAA Division I champion, two-time SEC champion, five-time USA Swimming national team member, world championship bronze medalist, as well as a 2021 Olympic trials finalist. Wow, that's a
And just a phenomenal person altogether, may I say that. Like, getting to
Truly.
know you over the past few days, I'm so excited to have you on because I genuinely just love you as a person. And I'm so excited for you to share your story and show the world like who you are because you're great.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So with further ado, I want to kind of go in and talk about some of the reasons that, you are here today. I know that you and I discussed kind of over the phone about some things that, we wanted to talk about. And then as well, when, you flew out here, that we had such incredible conversations and talks about some things that have gone on in your life and have gone on in your life since swimming. And so I just kind of would love to give you the floor and kind of share a little bit sort of about some of the past things that have happened, both swimming and outside of swimming as well, and kind of what led you sort of to this moment today.
Absolutely. So we are at 1 year ago, at the time of filming this, that my life changed forever. I have been a swimmer since I could walk. I'm from Florida. Every body of water you're near, how to swim at a very young age from where I'm from. And so have always had such a love for the sport. I swam club team starting in 2008 after watching Michael Phelps at the Olympics and just had such a fire for the sport, such a love for it. I had the opportunity to compete with Team USA both at the junior level and the senior national level. I got to swim in college for 5 years and was actually starting to start my professional career. Well, a year ago, I received a phone call that they had found 0.05 nanograms of a substance called vidatastat. That meant that I was automatically banned from the sport that I've worked my entire life for 4 years without any other context other than you can try to figure out where this came from, you can try to fight this, but as of this phone call, you're out of your sport for 4 years. So.
Wow. And I remember when you had mentioned to me that story, you talked about it publicly before. And wow, when releasing that statement, I can't even begin to imagine what the emotions and sort of, feelings that you had when you got that phone call. So when that phone call happened, what was your life like? What in those moments really sort of changed for you?
So just a little bit of background. In 2017, I competed at my first senior nationals. It was World Team Trials in Indianapolis at the IUPUI pool. That was supposed to be the start of the next chapter of my swimming career. I had just committed to the University of Alabama to swim Division I. I was getting ready for that next level. In 2023, I had graduated. I did my 5 years of eligibility at UA, and I had World Team Trials at the IUPUI pool in Indianapolis. That was supposed to be the start of my next chapter, the start of my professional career. I had set myself up to be on the U.S. national team again, to compete at Pan American Games, and to qualify for Olympic trials, where I would hopefully give myself my best shot at trying to make an Olympic team. And all of that was lined up. I felt so confident in where I was at in the sport. I was so excited about this next chapter. And a week after those swims, I get a phone call saying none of that was going to happen. And so it was the most gut-wrenching feeling I've ever had. I was sitting on my couch. It was a Friday night. I was eating dinner. I get a phone call from a random number. Usually I don't answer them. I answered this one. It was a representative from USADA, which is the United States Anti-Doping Agency. And he said, "Hi, Kensey, have you ever heard of a data stat?" Like, "No, what are you talking about?" He said, "Well, we found an estimate in your sample. We're going to send you a letter. You have the X amount of days. Let us know what you want to do." I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know what words he had just told me. I just knew that it was something horrible and confusing. And so super emotional. I called my parents. I was bawling. I don't even know how they understood what I said, but I somehow got the words out. I called my coaches who were, one of my coaches, it was her wedding that weekend. My other coach was in attendance at the wedding. They're amazing people. They called me back to check on me. One of my coaches literally called me on her wedding day to make sure I was okay, to try to understand what was happening. And so from there, it was just a lot of questions. And of course, when they call you on a Friday night, office is closed. There's no one to call. There's no one to figure out what happens next. And so I got connected with athlete ombuds. They help athletes with all sorts of different resources. The first thing I did was try to get connected to a legal team, try to get a team of lawyers to help me with this. I never thought at the age of 24 I would need lawyers for anything. Then I applied for financial aid. I'm fresh out of college. Swimming was supposed to be my job. Yeah. I was saving up to be able to make my dreams come true in the pool. And I got financial aid, and then I also got a therapist. And those were the three things that I was able to set up as soon as possible. And from there, we just tried to figure out what the next steps were to try to prove my innocence.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to applaud you for like the way that you went about it and handling it, because the fact that you're like, I need to do this, this, and this, like when to go get a therapist, like that's even going above and beyond for yourself to like manage your feelings and emotions that all this was probably bringing up in you. Like I can only imagine. And I'm so forever grateful that you had people you could call who were like, no, like I'm here for you. Like you need me right now. I got stuff going on, but so do you. So that's absolutely amazing. And once again, I can't even imagine the emotions that were probably going through your head in that moment. If you don't mind me asking, like, can you share a little bit of your relationship with the sport before you got this news? Because obviously, like, this is detrimental to something you've been working towards your entire life. So you had a relationship with swimming far beyond. How was that?
Swimming has been my entire life since day one. Yeah. I started swimming year round in 2008. I swam with my club team, which is where I met Matt, through 2018 and then on to college. And people talk about love-hate relationship with sports a lot. I never had the hate part of the relationship. I've always just loved the water. I've loved the social aspect, the relationships, the experiences that I've had throughout the sport, whether it's the life lessons of, you know, hard work pays off, but not always exactly when you want it to. Sometimes it takes patience and grit and just a little bit more time of working. I've gotten to travel all over the world, competing in bodies of water on most of the different continents around the world. And the people that I've been able to meet through there has been incredible. I've also grown into the person who I am today because of the challenges I faced in the sport. And so I've always been a little water bug, and I've always loved finding new ways to improve and work on myself and develop further relationships with my teammates.
Yeah. What about like COVID times? Because you didn't get the news until after COVID, right?
Yes,
and that
this
also
was a couple years later.
Yeah, and that also flipped everybody's world upside down. So like, were the rules kind of the same in the sports world?
Yes, so I was in the middle of class when everything started getting announced. At first, so I had just come off of my first SEC championship title in the mile, and we were getting ready to go to NCAAs. I had already had half of my suitcase packed for NCAAs, and we knew that things were starting to get weird. The NBA talked about we're not going to have fans in the stands. I'm like, okay, well, it's swimming, you know. The fan base, it's there. It's mostly parents and a few people who love the sport, but we can handle swimming without fans. We can be loud on our own as teammates. Then the ACC pulls out. And so as soon as the ACC pulled out, I was like, well, even if we have NCAAs, having one of the major conferences pull out, people aren't going to take it as seriously. So then I'm sitting in the middle of class because we didn't know what was happening yet. I refreshed my page. There's an article out, NCAA's canceled.
Oh, wow.
So I'm totally devastated. I had set myself up to swim well. Our team was on such a high. Like when I committed to the University of Alabama, we talked about the rising tide. And we talked about how our group of girls in my class, we were going to do something special. We were going to turn our team around. And we felt like that was the year that we would have been able to really turn things around. So we had a team meeting. They're like, hey, everyone needs to pack up and go home. Like everyone needs to go home. I thought I was getting my first spring break ever. Little did I know that I would be home for 6 months. And everyone's lives were turned upside down.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my mom talked me off of a ledge because I was getting ready to drive home that night. I was like, oh, we need to get out of here, not knowing what COVID was or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I need to pack a suitcase and drive home. And so my mom talked me off a ledge. I ended up packing up my entire apartment. She's like, I'm looking at the news. I think things are about to get a lot worse. And so packed up everything so I wouldn't have to do the back and forth. Drove home with just like garbage bags full of all of my stuff in my apartment, and got home, talked to my parents, put on a wetsuit, and hopped in my backyard pool immediately that day.
Oh, wow.
And that whole time, being from the state of Florida, I swam in 12 different pools and every body of water that was safe enough to be able to swim in. And I think it just created such a state of desperation to try to just, okay, I need to maintain where I was or try to get better. And the way that things were canceled at the time, at least in swimming, probably in a lot of sports, was, okay, well, this event's going to be canceled, but you still have Olympic trials to get ready for. Okay, Olympic trials got canceled, but you still have open water nationals to get ready for. Yeah. None of those events actually happened, but at the time, nobody knew. And so it was just a time of, I need to keep trying to get better. And so flash forward 2023, it took a long time for me to get back to where I was, to just be able to race freely and be able to race with confidence, knowing that I have put in the work and not to think about the what ifs or I have to do this, but just to race as my true authentic self. And so then coming into 2023, after receiving that phone call, we went through all of the steps of, okay, here's the next thing we can do, here's this. And I kept trying to swim on my own for a couple of months. But sports are hard when everything's going well.
Yeah.
Swimming is hard. It's such an independent sport. It's such an individual sport because it's you and the black line at the bottom of the pool. Or like I swim open water, so it's you in the bottom of the ocean sometimes. And so when it's just you and your thoughts swimming back and forth, not knowing how long this process was going to take, I thought it was going to be quick. And here we are a year later and I still don't have answers. Yeah. And so it gave me those flashbacks to COVID time of just desperation of, why am I doing this? And so in August, I put a pause on the sport and started pursuing other ways of fitness, other ways to move my body and stay fit and stay healthy, because I love working out. I love being able to push myself in new ways, but I knew that continuing swimming wasn't going to be good for me mentally while still trying to fight this case and prove the truth that I didn't take any substances that would give me an unfair advantage over my competition and continue to battle this.
Oh, wow. And by all means, like, I know this is probably an intense question to ask in a way, but like when you were in the pool during those times, like with COVID, when you're like, I could imagine, like, is any of this worth it? You know what I mean? Like, when is everything going to come back? Like, I don't have people by my side encouraging me. It's just me in here. The world's flipped upside down. After you get that news too, you're still in the pool. Like, what's actually going through your head in those moments when you're in the pool, if you don't mind me asking? Like, is it encouraging? Is it in a way like stressful?
I, at first, was super encouraged. I was like, well, I'm very blessed. I have different pools, even if they're not the best pools to be able to swim in. I have opportunities to get in the water, whereas so many people did not. I have a way to get connected, because the thing about swimming is it's one of those sports, like, you're out of the water for 2 days and you lose your feel for the water. And no matter how many miles you try to run or any other kind of cross training, it's not that same feeling as swimming. And so I was incredibly blessed to be able to keep swimming, but I think it was more discouraging because I wasn't hitting the times that I would have when I'm racing my teammates. I didn't have a coach there to be able to say, hey, let's work on this or let's focus on that. And it's just you in the pool, and it totally took out the social aspect. Yeah. I love showing up to practice and joking around with my teammates. I love bantering back and forth with my coach. We have a great relationship. And all of those things weren't there. Yeah. And so I think that it probably did more harm in the end. Had I not been able to swim, I think it would have been a little bit different, because it took me a really long time to get out of that mindset.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the fact that you knew though, you're like, I know, like it's the lesser of two evils, right? You're like, I'm so hyper focused on this now and I don't have anybody by my side. And in my mind, all these things are racing, but like you knew in the long run, you would be better off doing it for yourself, even though like both ways, it's like, it's not what you expected. So I like you handled that situation also very well. But it was the testing the same too, like with athletes as well. Like
As far as how testing works.
yeah, like the COVID testing. Like I know we're gonna talk about like the doping incident a little bit more, but like I know before you mentioned like during COVID times it was extra stressful because like just the pressure that they put on athletes. You guys have an insanely high standard to live up to in so many aspects, and I feel like what you told me previously was like it just made it kind of worse.
Absolutely. We had, I know I can speak for myself and definitely several of my teammates. I had so much anxiety that year coming back into training because we finally got back to school in August. Our pools opened up sometime in September, and we had to report our symptoms every single day. We had to get a green light saying, okay, you're good to go. We got tested every week, and those tests are so painful.
Yeah.
But you get tested, and it wasn't just, okay, well, hopefully you don't get COVID. It's, well, hopefully you don't get COVID, and hopefully no one you possibly could have interacted with got COVID, or else you're going to go get put up in a hotel room for 2 weeks. And I've had friends, I fortunately did not end up testing positive, and no one in my bubble had either. But I have friends who did, and they were cooped up in a hotel room for 2 weeks, just them and whatever they packed in their bag. No fresh air, no getting outside, no social interactions other than what you can do on your phone. And so that had a huge toll on athletes too. But I had never taken more than a few days out of the water before. What is vacation? I mean, even then it was, okay, let's go find a pool before we go do whatever family activity we're going to do. Or our vacations are going to revolve around a swim meet. And so not knowing what it was like to take that time out of the water and how the impact of taking 2 weeks out in the fall is going to impact your SEC championship in February and your NCAA championship in March and Olympic trials in June. I was so worried the whole time about just getting pulled out of the water any second that I feel like I walked around with a lot of fear. And even when speaking with a therapist, it was still such a difficult time because nobody really knew a whole lot of what was going on. And nobody also really could control what we were doing. So we just tried to stay within our bubbles. We tried to stay in our close-knit circles, do everything you can. But at the end of the day, there are so many things out of your control. And swimming can be taken away like that.
Yeah. I mean, and in your case too, like that's what I mean. I feel like your world's been flipped upside down so many times and you've handled it with so much grace. And like you said before, like things change at a moment's notice. And when you got your results, things changed at a moment's notice. So like, I know you briefly mentioned it, but tell us a little bit more about how you felt, the things that were going through your head, and like, what are even the standards for that kind of stuff?
So I've been in the testing pool since 2018. I can get tested in competition and out of competition. And what that means is you can just randomly get tested at any time. You have to update your whereabouts. So I would have to say where I was, when my classes were, when my practices were, an hour window every single day of where I was going to be. But they can test you anytime. I've gotten tested at 5 a.m. I've gotten tested at 11 p.m. I've had to leave dinners.
Wait, 5 a.m. and 11 p.m.?
You can get tested at any time.
How is that?
That is
like
crazy.
That's such a huge invasion of privacy, I feel like.
It's one of those, it's definitely like a sacrifice that athletes make to ensure clean sport. But now
but that's any day of the week. Like even if you're like on vacation or like, God forbid, you have something going on with your family where it's just like a stressful time in general, you can't be like, I just need a break for like a day or two, please.
They can come and test you anytime. And I mean, sometimes it's a couple weeks and sometimes it's a couple of months, but you have to have your whereabouts up to date. And you have to make sure that people know where you are so that they can show up and test you at any point.
What if you have a moment's notice where like you have, say, a death in the family or something, and you just you forget to update, like you're in a super traumatic situation, you're human, you forget things. What happens if you don't update your situation, like update your location, and they look for you?
A 3-strike rule. And so over the course of your time, if you have 3 whereabout mishaps in X amount of time, you would end up getting banned for however long. And so it was kind of like 3 strikes and you're out. I never had a whereabouts miss. I thankfully I'm very on top of it. But I mean, there's been times where you try to do something spontaneous and like, let me log into the app really quick and change where I'm going to be.
Wow.
I just feel like that in general would be so stressful because it's on top of like you just trying to live your life along with like training and like educating yourself, because you have 3 degrees too, which I find phenomenal and amazing. So you're doing all these things, and to add on top, you have to tell somebody besides your family, because everyone, like your family and friends, want to know where you are. You have to keep that in the back of your mind too. Like, this is also my number one. I have to keep them updated. I would feel suffocated personally.
It is exhausting, and trying to make sure that you are on top of your whereabouts. And thankfully, like when you are a student athlete, your schedule is pretty consistent. But when you're traveling, you need to figure out what hotel your team is staying at so you can update them. And I even was late to a lab one time for school because I got tested in a window. And, you know, when you're giving blood and urine, like sometimes it takes a little bit longer to produce your samples. And so I was late to a lab one time and showed up in the middle of class because I was being tested at that time.
Oh my goodness.
I've even had friends that have had to leave football games. And when you're in an SEC school, leaving a football game is a really big deal.
It's a religious event.
Yes.
That's like, I think that's crazy, but if anything, that definitely shows your commitment to the sport and how much you love it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's crazy. So tell me a little bit about the doping story in a way. Like when they called you, they told you your results. You said it was like nothing that was in your system, correct?
The amount that they found in my sample is the equivalent of going up to, I asked my lawyer this because I was like, I don't even understand what these numbers mean.
Yeah.
And it's the equivalent of taking a salt shaker to an Olympic size 50-meter pool and just shaking it.
Once?
And yes.
Just like
one shake. That's what it was.
So like kind of nothing,
literally
essentially.
Mm-hmm. But it's a non-threshold substance. And so the way that WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, have their rules written is with non-threshold substances like Vidatastat, it doesn't matter if I had an entire 50-meter pool in my body or if I had what they were able to find in my sample. It doesn't matter what the threshold is.
But yet we have thresholds for for alcohol use, just say.
Well, I mean,
And
that
DUIs.
completely, yeah. Like we have threshold. You're right, for driving like under the influence, we have threshold. I was saying before too, like in the medical field, we even have like they give you a little bit of a grace thing, and this is people who are actually like doctors, like surgical techs, even me, like people who have other people's lives in their hand, you know, like literally taking a blade to somebody's chest, looking like touching their heart and their vital organs. Like it's a life, it's a spirit in your hands. And they even have a certain threshold for that. But we're holding athletes also to a higher standard than doctors.
And they don't look at anything before or after. So like I said, I've been in the testing pool since 2018. I've had over 20 tests where they can show up anytime. I've had in-competition tests, out-of-competition tests. The craziest thing was I was tested on July 1st. Then I was tested at home on July 5th. I received my phone call on July 7th. So we're talking about 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
July 1st is when they found it in my sample. July 5th, totally clean, no issues. And so that didn't even matter because they found it in that one sample, that it didn't matter that I had 20 plus clean tests over the course of 6 years. It didn't matter that the amount that they were able to find. You're automatically guilty until hopefully maybe you can prove otherwise, and then you have to go through a whole hearing process.
Why are you guilty till proven innocent? Like
That's the opposite of our judicial system, actually, yeah.
Is you are innocent until proven guilty. What?
That's what I mean. Within a few minutes notice, be like, I can give you another sample. Fine, let's do it again. They won't do that.
No, the way that the codes are written is so black and white that it doesn't take an individual or a gray area case. And the sad thing is this has happened to other athletes. Because when I made my post when the arbitrator made his decision, and we can get into all of that too, about what that year looked like to get to the hearing and to get to the decision. But when I posted it publicly, I had athletes reach out saying, thank you for sharing your story. My career ended in the same way, or I'm currently going through this.
Yeah.
How do I manage? And so I'm not the first athlete. I won't be the last athlete. And so I think one of the biggest things is that we really need to look at the way that the codes are written. Because USADA is just following WADA's rules. They're the World Anti-Doping Agency. And so I've even spoken with the CEO of USADA, Travis Tygart, and he gave me permission to speak about our conversation. But he talked to me about how heartbreaking and confusing my case has been, because no one knows where this substance could have come from. I don't even know how one would obtain this substance. It wasn't FDA approved in the US until March of 2024. It's for people with chronic kidney disease on dialysis for at least 3 months. So this has baffled so many people, and he wants to be able to use my story to maybe be able to advocate for change. And that's also what I want to be able to do, is advocate for change on these non-threshold rules, because it's just going to keep ruining athletes' lives.
Yeah. And I know the last thing you are is a cheater. You would never. Like, that is insane. And like the fact that it's even for a drug that doesn't even help you in any way, shape, or form.
You would be like, if I really wanted to cheat and I thought there was a decent chance, like, give me something that's going to give me a heads up. That's what my thought process would be.
Well, people didn't even know. So when I Googled this, first I had to look up how to spell it, because I didn't even know what Vidadistat was. So I had to look up how to spell it. And then from there weren't that many results on Google, because again, it was very much in the early FDA testing. And so now a year later, I've learned a lot of what the side effects can be. I mean, one of the easy side effects is diarrhea. If you're trying to swim through that, oh my goodness, that would be horrible. Other things, blood clots, stroke, death, things like that, where some people have tried to comment and argue that it can increase your white blood cell count to help with your endurance, but it's something you would have to take continuously over time. But people didn't even know. When I Googled it, I couldn't have told you that a year ago when I was trying to figure out what this was. I wouldn't have been able to tell you how you could have, how I could have consumed it, how I could have come into contact with it, what it even would have done for my body.
That's what I mean. I'm like, this isn't even logical in my opinion.
And also, I wouldn't need to do anything to improve my endurance. In 2022, I swam a 25K at World Championships. That's a 5.5 hour swim straight. But it didn't make sense from day one. It still doesn't make sense. And I'm still looking for answers of trying to figure out how this could have happened.
Oh, man.
Well, I tell you, and, just to sort of, I'm very much wrap on this discussion. Do you feel like eventually you will find the answers that you are looking for?
I'm hopeful as it becomes more public, because it wasn't public for the last year. And so my legal team and I did everything that we could to try to figure it out, and kept coming up short. But as it now has become public, I'm hoping that more people can help provide answers. And that's really what I'm looking for and asking for, and willing to continue to speak and share my story. One, because I know the truth. I know that I didn't take a performance enhancing drug. I will never take anything that would give me an unfair advantage over competition. I do believe in clean sport. And so I'm hoping that as more information can come out, we can figure this out, because I'm the first and only case that I know of Vidadistat also. And so I am hopeful that as we continue to learn more, I'll find answers. But the scariest part of all of this is I might not ever know.
Yeah. And so I know that, sort of moving forward, you've sort of changed your life dramatically in a way, because you sort of had to. And so I would love, for you to kind of go into depth and talk about, what you're doing now, how you got there, and sort of what led you to, sort of changing a lot of the mindset that you had about the sport of swimming, as well as, everything that you are doing now.
So it's kind of been two different things in my life. It's one, been figuring out this case and doing anything from testing any possible supplement I could have come into contact with, giving a hair sample, doing a polygraph, all of that stuff behind closed doors, because the circle that knew what was going on was incredibly small. But at the same time, knowing that I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to happen and hope we found an answer and hope that I could get back in the water. I knew pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be a quick process, which is why I put swimming on pause in August. And I tried to figure out what those next steps were. I had a really tough conversation with my mom one of the early days into this, where I didn't want to get out of bed. I thought my purpose was to swim. I thought that I was setting myself up to be able to achieve my dreams, pursue my goals. I was going to make it work as a professional swimmer. That was something I've dreamed of since I was a little kid. I always knew I wanted to go to that next level. And so I had a really tough conversation with my mom where I could just hear her voice break. And she said, you need to keep putting one foot in front of the other because you're going to lose a lot more than swimming. And I think just knowing that, and it still makes me emotional thinking about it a year later, because I needed to put one step in front of the other, because swimming is what I did. It's not who I am. It's not where I place my identity. And sports end for people all the time. It's going to happen to every single athlete at one point or another. Mine is definitely an extreme case. My sport was ripped away from me in one phone call, but injuries happen, and that can end a career immediately. I mean, look at the gymnastics Olympic trials, how many injuries there were at that competition, how many season-ending or career-ending injuries like that. Sometimes you don't go on to swim past college. Sometimes you don't go on to play your sport beyond high school. So sports end. It's just trying to figure out what's next. And no one really prepares you for that.
Yeah. And I want to talk about like what you did, because I know that you actually met with a therapist after this, and you guys had to talk about, sort of setting goals and trying to figure out like what you were going to do and how you went about that. So, from me working in mental health, I would love to kind of know some more about that and what kind of the conversations that you and your therapist had.
I'm super grateful for my therapist. She has helped me a ton this year. Just realize the little things, like what goal setting looks like beyond sports. Goals were always a numerical value to me. It was always, here's a time that I want to go that's either going to get me this cut, that's going to get me this result, that's going to get me on this team. And so it was, okay, here's the time I want to go, and here are the times that I need to go and practice to be able to get there. And I would work on that plan with my coach. Well, the only kind of numerical goal that I could think of post swimming was a financial goal. So my first step was I need to get a job. I have 3 degrees, and I didn't just want to get a job for the sake of, okay, let's pay the bills. I wanted to do something that I knew I would have a lot of passion for and be able to pour into. And so a really cool God moment. My faith is super important to me. I was looking for jobs in September, and the University of Alabama had a position open up for our adapted athletics program. It's wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, and para track and field. And apparently, I learned this months later, they were looking to open up that job since April. I wasn't looking for a job in April, but I was in September when the position opened up. And so went through the interview process, got offered the job, and started in October working with our adapted athletics program. So that was one thing that my therapist pointed out. She's like, well, one of your goals was to figure out a job that you were passionate about and like start working post-grad. Another goal that I had was finding ways to move my body in a way that I enjoyed, because swimming was not going to be it. Swimming by yourself, not knowing if you were going to be able to race anytime soon, things like that really fueled my love for the sport. I needed to figure something else out. So I've tried a lot of different workout classes, and I have gotten super into spin. And so I'm actually currently training to become a spin instructor as well at a studio in Tuscaloosa. And I love that. It's spinning, bar, and then body weight strength and core work. And it's been so fun, and it's offered a whole new community for me. One of my other goals that I didn't realize was a goal at the time was I wanted to make friends that weren't necessarily connected to the athletic world. Yeah. I work with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes program. I did it as a student. Now I'm a mentor and campus ambassador. But a lot of my friends are student athletes, and I absolutely adore all of them, and I'm so grateful for those friendships. But now being away from the athletic world, I wanted to be able to develop a community on top of that community that I already have, where it wasn't necessarily, oh, sorry, I can't do this, I'm going to practice, which is totally fair. Yeah. I never skip a practice. But to find that community outside of the sports world, and my spin studio helped me with that. Other organizations that I've been able to join as an adult in a college town have really opened up those doors. But I didn't realize that those were goals until my therapist pointed it out to me that, hey, you said you wanted to do this, this, and this. Well, here you are months later, and these are the things that you've done.
what was it like finding those communities outside of swimming? Because, you know, you and I had talked about this, as I really struggled when I left the sport of swimming. I was like, my God, what do I do? And I found a love for film and television. So I, you know, did a little bit of acting just to like keep the, like, it was almost like a cathartic release in a way. So, right. So, I mean, like, you know, for you, like doing like spin classes and stuff and like going to Pilates and yoga and those things, like, I mean, what was it like sort of building those communities outside that sport of swimming?
I think Christina worded it really well in a conversation we had earlier. You do the things that you're passionate about and you love, and you find those other people that have those similar passions. So I love working out and moving my body in a healthy way. Okay, well, I've just found a whole community of people who want to do that same kind of thing. And the cool part is we can go do a really hard class, push our bodies, and then go grab dinner or coffee afterwards. Yeah. I love my church community, finding people who, you know, joining a small group is something that you can do. Finding those connections that happen naturally that sometimes take time. Yeah. They honestly sometimes take time. And I was having a conversation with my boyfriend when I first joined the spin studio, and he was like, how's it going? Like, have you made some new friends? I was like, well, I've like had some good conversations with people, but like no one that I would consider like a friend that I'm gonna go text and we're gonna go hang out. And I didn't know if that was gonna happen automatically, because when you're on a team with someone, you kind of have to be friends with everyone. Like these are your automatic built-in friends and family. And so it took a little bit of time to be able to develop those relationships, but they're absolutely incredible. And they're people who I do go get coffee with now.
And also communication skills. Yes. I have to say, like, I was so awkward when I realized I didn't have like non-swim friends, because I was like, oh, couldn't talk about the sport.
Yeah,
swimming.
You're like,
they
what
would
else
have
do we
no
talk
idea.
about?
And I was like, you know, and it's like, what do you
what else do you talk about?
You know?
Life, your path. That's why I tell that, like, yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I tell people all the time. I'm like, you want to make new friends, like good friends that you're going to get along with, go do the things that you love, because chances are that if they're there, they like the same things as you. And no, you're not going to hit it off with everybody, but like, that's how you meet the people that have similar interests that usually like are going to keep you grounded enough. Not like you move on to the next thing. Like we talked about before, everyone's like, we have these things that we think we should be doing, right? But like nobody said like, it's set in stone. That's why I feel like, and I applaud you once again. I applaud you so much. I'm sorry. You're just amazing. But like the fact that I'm like, if anything, you took this as an opportunity to find you outside of swimming. Cause like we've said, like we are so much more than this thing that we thought was our entire life. Like we're multifaceted human beings. Just because you're obsessed with one thing and you put your heart and soul into it does not mean you can't do the same with so many other things in life. And that's why it's like, I do get that this is very unfortunate, but I do believe there's blessings in the downtimes. There's blessings in those tragedies, because they give you time to show up for yourself and find out what you're really made of. That's why I'm like, right now, I think this could be a beautiful opportunity for you when you're like, you're out there interacting with people, giving advice to like young athletes that as you've learned from being in the sport for so long. And that's invaluable, is helping like your community and the people around you. And that's what you decided to do. You didn't get wrapped up in your head like, oh, woe was me. Like, this is horrible. How can I figure out a way to help me? You're like, how can I help me and also build things around me as well?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, don't get me wrong, there have been a lot of dark days. There have been a lot of tears behind closed doors and just tough days where, okay, we got to put on a smile. We got to put on a brave face. But also I can genuinely say in the last year, a lot of those smiles have been so genuine because of the support that I have, because of where I know my strength comes from. I've mentioned my faith is super important to me. And so we always talked about in our Fellowship of Christian Athletes group that our sport is what we do and not who we are. Well, now let's see if I can actually walk the walk of not putting my identity in my sport, not being a part of it anymore, and figuring out the other things that I can do. Because I was reading this really good book, it's The Unfair Advantage, and it just talks about how our purpose comes from our passions, but it also comes from our pain. And that's where we're able to find God's ultimate plan in everything, because we're going to go through hard times. Yeah. Everyone is going to face adversity. But knowing that we are incredibly loved, knowing that we can do hard things, that God isn't going to give us anything that we can't handle, and it's going to be tough, and we do need to lean on the support that we have, absolutely, and we do need to make sure our mental health is a huge focus of it, but He's not going to give us anything that we can't handle. Yeah. And so keeping that in mind too, I think the hardest part about this last year, not being where I quote unquote thought I should have been, having to give up opportunities that I had earned and worked so hard for, not just in the last year, but over the course of my entire swimming career. But knowing that I can continue to share now my story. I wasn't able to talk about it for a year either. So then when I'm trying to give advice to people or talk to friends who are like, I don't know what I'm doing, I couldn't be like, oh yeah, me too, because of this.
Nobody really know. I mean, people know what they're doing, but like, do you really?
No.
Like, we think it's going to end up one way, then it goes another way. And it's just, people don't talk about that as much.
No.
You know, everyone's like, oh yeah, I did this and then it ended up this way and look at me. But I'm like, how many times have things not worked out the way that you wanted it to? Or there was a road bump in the way. You know what I mean? Like you said, we all have these visions of how things are going to work out, but everybody's been there where there's a time where it's like, I was not expecting that.
Absolutely. And I'm still trying to figure out what those next steps are for me. And I really needed to work with my therapist. And I actually had a really good conversation with my dad about it, because there were so many times where I was really angry when certain swimming events would come up throughout the year. Like the day-to-day was fine.
Yeah.
But then athletes are at Pan American Games and I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to be swimming this event. I was supposed to get that record. I was supposed to win that medal. I was supposed to race this time. And I had this mindset, I'm supposed to. Yeah. Well, tomorrow isn't promised, and we're not supposed to be doing anything. Like, we can set all of these plans for us, but like you said, plans change. And while I never ever would have imagined that I'm in the spot that I am now, I think if I had continued in that mindset of, well, I should be competing here and I should be doing that, I think that it would have really had a negative impact on how I've been able to handle this last year. And while I do wish that I could have had a lot of those opportunities, I do feel like I was robbed many of those opportunities. But I've also been able to see all of the blessings that I've had in this new year, this new chapter of my life that I definitely would not have had those should haves happened.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, when there are those moments where you're like, I should have been a part of this, now what do you tell yourself when you get those like intrusive thoughts?
I think if it's a quick thought and I'm out in public, if it's out in public, I just kind of flip the script really quick. And sometimes I will push it aside or just think like, no, just be present, be where your feet are planted. But then I'll dive into it when I'm at home. And I like to journal a lot. I journaled as an athlete. I now journal a lot outside of it. It's kind of a way for me to reflect, to meditate, to pray, to be able to really clear out my thoughts, because so often we have all of these thoughts jumbled up in our heads, and everything seems like such a bigger deal than when you put it on paper. And when you're able to put it on paper, you can just, it doesn't necessarily clear your head, but it makes it so much clearer than 7 million thoughts in your head at one time. You can actually see what they are written out. And so that's something I do a lot. I will call my loved ones and I'll talk them through. I mean, they can talk me off of a ledge a lot of the times, especially because sometimes you just need to be able to rant about things. My therapist has helped me out a lot about some of those really tough moments, and also just changing my perspective. Like watching Olympic trials was really tough. Being able to visualize yourself somewhere and thinking about, what if I could have been there? What could I have done? Could I have made the Olympic team? I don't know. And dwelling on the what ifs were really tough, but being able to talk to my coaches during that time, who I still stay in contact with, and just know that those relationships are always going to be there. And then also it was bittersweet because I was so excited for a lot of my friends and the opportunities that they had, making their first Olympic team, making an Olympic trials final. And it was so fun to be able to see their excitement through the screen and text them afterwards. But it was also really hard not being there.
Truly. And I also, it's not more of a comment, but a statement, and that I love that you used your faith as such a huge foundation, because faith, spiritualism, whatever you want to call it at the end of the day, it's so valuable and it can keep you moving, forward. And so I just want to say, like, it's so unbelievably amazing to just see you talk about that in the way that you did, especially with FCA. And, and so I also too, just like, could you talk a little more too about like sort of like the spiritual side of it, and like how that sort of impacted your thought process and sort of through all of this moving forward?
My faith, just like everything else in my life, has been a process. You don't wake up one day with all of the knowledge, all the skills. And I definitely, even as I continue my relationship with the Lord, I read through my Bible, I go to my Bible studies. I'm never going to know everything. And I think that's one of the coolest things about faith, is that we aren't going to have all of the answers, and that can be super intimidating to people, but it's a working relationship. And so that started when I was really young. Foundations that are super important to my family that I then, once I got to the age where I could drive myself to church, really took over. And I took a lot more ownership about what that relationship meant to me. And then in college, one of the things that I was really looking forward to was having the opportunity to grow. I didn't choose the in-state school. I left home. I couldn't just drive home really quickly if I was having a problem with a roommate, a teammate, a class, a coach. I could always call my loved ones, but it wasn't as easy as, okay, well, I can just go home and forget about it. Mm-hmm. And so you go through a lot of trials and tribulations at any point in life, but especially in those college years. We had 4 head coaches at my time as a swimmer. That's insane. We had a pandemic. Who would have predicted that? Definitely not anyone I could have talked to. We had all sorts of different kind of controversies in our time. Things like NIL. What does that mean for the sport? Just all sorts of things that have happened over the course of my 4, then an additional 5 years when we got the COVID extra year of eligibility, that I was able to really lean on my faith. And thankfully, I got connected with a super amazing group of people that we were all going through struggles, and we were vulnerable enough to be able to talk about it, because I think so many times, especially college kids, as that 18 to 22-year-old range, everyone thinks we're doing it on our own. Yeah. No one knows what I'm dealing with. No one knows this relationship struggle. No one knows how you can handle a setback in your sport. But the thing is, so many people are dealing with that. And when you're able to have those conversations, especially with it linked to faith, that is something that is so important to me. It helps you get through that. And I think that foundation that I've been able to build up year after year, and the adversity that I've been able to face over time, is what set me up to be able to handle this last year with so much strength, and knowing where that strength comes from.
I love that.
No, that's amazing. And that's why I know when we were even briefly talking too, is like, I don't want to diminish that this was obviously like a very unfortunate and unfair thing that's happened to you. But once again, getting to know you a lot, I'm like, I think potentially this could be absolutely amazing, because you are such a strong, independent, like sweet individual who like knows what you're highly educated, you know what you're talking about, you're passionate, and you're genuine. And if there's going to be a message to help people in the athletic community get across or past these unfair regulations that are actually like traumatizing athletes today, and be that voice of reason and hopefully provoke change, I could see it being you. And that's why, even though once again, like I know you love swimming and it will always be a part of your life, but like I am so excited to see what you do in the future with this, because you're genuinely such an amazing person. And it's like, when it comes to my faith, once again, like I said, I'm like, I don't really believe in setbacks. I believe that it's just like pivoting you to a new area of your life. And if you go with it, and you go with it with like a full heart and an open mind and with the best intentions, only good things are going to come from it. So that's why I'm like, I'm excited to see where you go, because like your message is so powerful, and you have the power within you to like influence people and the sport still, even though you're not in the water.
Thank you. And I really hope that I can continue, even if I can just have an impact on one person. But I'm super grateful for speaking opportunities like this to be able to share my story. And now that everything is out in public, I can talk about not only what I went through this last year, but in the years leading up to it, and what it looked like. Because in this last year, I was showing up for work every day, ready to go. Whatever they threw at me, I was ready for it. And I've learned so much about a whole new world of sports with adapted athletics. But then behind the scenes, I'm trying to send things off to France to get tested, to try to figure out where the source could have come from. Everything, unfortunately, came back clean, which shows that I did everything I could have possibly done in the lead up to that, to be able to continue to be a clean athlete. But we still don't know where the source is. Again, the polygraph, giving a hair sample.
I was going to say hair. Like, that stuff stays in your hair forever. And the fact that that came up clean, I'm over here like, come on.
Exactly. I have a lot of hair, too.
Yeah, no.
So I have like a year's worth of hair.
I grew this all in 2 days.
Seriously.
Showed up clean. And so that's where I'm like, I don't even know if it was ever actually in my system. Yeah. And that's the scary part, is there is a lot of subjectivity in testing. There can be malfunctions in testing equipment. Different labs across the U.S. and across the world have different testing abilities. And so there's so many theories that I've thought about and tried to figure out the ifs, ands, what's, whys. But that's where I am still hoping for answers. But again, yes, that was all going on behind closed doors and behind the scene, but I could still show up every day and put my best foot forward. And Romans 8:28 talks about all things work for the good of God. And I definitely did not directly quote that, but it's how we are capable of showing up every single day, even when life is tough. And even if it's not what we thought we were supposed to do, that we can still give everything we have and do it for God's glory, to be able to do it, to be able to present ourselves best as we can, to give everything we have, even if it's not exactly what we were anticipating, hoping for. It's not where we thought we were supposed to be in that time. We can still put our best foot forward.
That's amazing. So speaking of best foot forward, you did, the swimming nerd in me is going to come out a little bit.
Let's hear it.
Because this woman did 5.5 hours in an open water swim in Europe. I have to know.
I know you're dying inside from hearing that. You're like, never.
I no, because I personally, I have a huge fear of
open water.
Open water, because I like to see what's underneath me. So from being in this pool forever. But I got to know, how did you do that race? What was the preparation leading up to it? What was it like to swim 5.5 hours? By the way, nonstop. You can't stop during this race or you're done. So what went into that, and how did you sort of mentally prep, and what was going through your mind while you were swimming your heart out for 5.5 hours?
So the biggest thing about open water that differs from pool swimming is it is open water, and you are swimming in a pack of people. There are no lane lines. Time does not matter. It's just about how you place. And so in open water, I think this is what has helped me so much in life, is that you have to be adaptable. You have to be ready for a buoy flying off course. You have to be ready to get kicked in the chest or a black eye. I've definitely left in a race, a busted lip. You have to be ready for anything. You have to be ready for things to not go well. And the toughest, best open water swimmers know how to adjust to that. And so that year, I qualified for the national team in the 10K in one of the roughest open water races I've ever experienced. There were so many waves. A lot of open water is about strategy and how to pace off of people and swim in that pack to try to conserve energy before you make your move. Well, that was not happening in that open water national qualification. No one could see each other. The waves were absolutely crazy. It was in Fort Myers, and that's usually pretty flat water. Well, we just had a really bad day because it was just the most chaotic race. And so when I finished, you could have told me I was first or dead last, and I would have no idea. Oh, wow. And I ended up placing in the top 5, qualifying for the U.S. national team. And from there, got to go to Portugal for our next qualifier. And so open water is a series of qualifications, whereas pool, it's usually one competition. It's your trials, it's one and done. Where open water, it's a series of races. So then I went to Portugal, and I swam another really tough race. The conditions were crazy. We were wearing wetsuits, and wetsuits are very different than your normal tech suits for wearing, for racing in. It's a bit uncomfortable. Again, a very choppy swim. I finished that race. The whole day goes by. I'm so antsy. Okay, did I qualify for Worlds? What's happening? I get called in. The coaches tell me, hey, congratulations. We have a spot for you on the World Championship team with Team USA. 25K.
Oh,
that's crazy.
25K. So I've done now several 10K open water swims. Those usually take about 2 hours. I've never swum even close to that amount in a practice, let alone in a race. And so
were you just
immediately
your face right now. Oh
immediately my answer was absolutely yes. My dream was to be able to wear the American flag cap at the senior level meet. I had qualified for Junior Worlds twice, in 2016 in the Netherlands and in 2018 in Israel. And just being able to represent your country on the international stage is one of the coolest things. It's a feeling that I don't think I'll ever be able to replicate in that exact way. And so immediately my answer was yes. Well, the thing was, we didn't have that much time between that qualification and the actual race. And so it wasn't like I could really adjust my training to prepare my body for a 25K swim. A couple of weeks. And so we're looking at
any of this, I'm drowning. That's what I mean. You're so strong.
I qualified in May, and that race was going to be in June. And so it's only a couple of weeks. So one, you're flying back to the US, you're getting back into training. But if I had ramped up to that kind of yardage, I probably would have had a lot of injuries. I don't think my body would have been able to adjust that quickly. And so we kind of just maintained our training plan. And so much of that race was mental. So much of that race was what was going on between my ears, underneath my cap. And a lot of it was just positive self-talk, of keeping my thoughts super simple. I kind of call it going into like that numb stage, when you're pushing your body to a level that you've never done before. And so I call it that numb stage, because it's almost like you just let go and let your body take over. And so keeping my thoughts super simple, of just a simple technique, like keeping my elbows high so I don't slip through the water. And I can do this. Like, I'm strong, I'm fast, and I've got this. I also said a lot of prayers during that race. The biggest strategy was just to be as close to the feet in front of me the entire time. And then as soon as people started making the move, it was give everything you've got.
Really? So at what point did it start like realizing you had to like make those moves?
Making the moves. So it was a 10-lap race. On lap 8.5 is when people started going. And there I was competing against people who had won world championships in the 25K. I was racing against people who do 25Ks for fun. I had never done anything close to that before. And so by the time everyone was starting to make their move, I was like, just give what you've got at this point. And so I was able to finish the race top 10 in the world, which was such a cool feeling. Honestly, it didn't matter what I had placed. I was just really proud that I was able to finish. But I was able to finish in the top 10 wearing the American flag cap. I've never felt that kind of feeling in my body whatsoever afterwards, but I was so tired of being on my stomach at that point. I just wanted to go vertical.
I can't even.
That's incredible. Your mind truly does give up, though, before your body. And like, you harnessed that energy within you and kept yourself going. And that's amazing.
How did you stay hydrated?
You do feed.
As you're in water, as you're
the logistics questions. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Do not drink the lake or the ocean water in open water.
Okay.
Don't do that.
There we go. All
you
right.
actually swim past a feeding dock, and your coach or one of the Team USA coaches has a pole with a little bucket on it and your feed in it. And your feed is like really delicious. It's like goo and electrolytes and...
Is it like those little packets you see runners take
sometimes?
Yes, and by delicious, I mean it gets the job done, and you hope that you have a giant cheeseburger waiting for you at the finish, because it's not great, but it gets you going.
Oh my gosh.
And so you swim past, and you take your feed, and you keep swimming, but you can't stop. You can't hang on to the pole that they're holding on to. You can't hang on to the dock. You literally just tread water on your back, funnel it down, chuck the bottle, and go.
That's intense.
Yes.
Oh my God. See, that's why I'm like, over here, I have absolutely so much faith in what's to come for you, because it's clear that you're such a strong individually, both like physically, mentally, and spiritually. After hearing that, because you literally kind of took the impossible into your hands in a way. You said you've never done anything like that. And you did it within such a short period of time, just based on like you believing in your own capabilities. So once again, amazing. While you were telling me that story, I just kind of wanted to jump out of my seat and be like, hell yes. But I was literally holding in so much right now. I'm like, I can't. I just want to run around for you. On that note, too, since I do believe at this point you can do absolutely anything that you want, do you have like a plan for what you want next? Like, what's biggest dreams, wildest imagination? Like, what would you want?
I honestly don't know what the next big dream is. We're definitely very fresh into it's the Olympic year. Olympic trials just happened for swimming. The Olympic Games are coming up, and that was kind of like the big dream. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much longer I would have swum past this year. Only time could have told. And I don't have what those big dreams are yet, but I think that's okay. And Completely. I've accepted that it's okay to not know what those next passions are. So I think I've got like the little goals now. Like I've started to get into running. For a lot of swimmers, that's everyone's worst nightmare, is trying to figure out how to exercise on land. And so I've kind of gotten into running. So who knows? Maybe I'll go through my like marathon phase. I don't know. Maybe at some point down the road I'll get into swimming. Maybe I'll write a book. I honestly have no idea, but I think
I would love to read that book.
Possible.
Same.
Yeah.
Especially because like you talked about like the journaling, so we call it narrative
Penguin
therapy.
Publishing.
I know, for real.
No.
Honestly, like that would I would love like you know, obviously those are very private journals, but I can imagine like just being able to read those, what it was like to go through the things that you've gone through and come out the other side. And one of the biggest things too that, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast was like so many athletes and so many people in general talk about these insane struggles. And especially in the world of therapy, it's like, what's next? How do I create success for myself after I've created all this success?
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like when you're at one mountaintop and that mountaintop is rugged and removed from you completely, where's your next mountain at? And how do you get up there? And I just like, the thing is like the fact that you were where you were and you're even here where you are and you're still at another mountaintop is just absolutely incredible. And it's just so exciting to see you keep climbing and pushing forward. So I'm just seriously, I'm like, as a friend and as a former teammate, I'm just so proud of you and for what you've done. It's just absolutely incredible. So I'm just beyond ecstatic for you. It's been amazing.
Thank you. And I think the things that I've journaled, I wanted to make sure that I knew what those raw emotions felt like from when I'm able to reflect on them later, because I had so many different kinds of emotions in my head. I had so many feelings of anger, confusion. You know, my whole reputation was being questioned. My character was being questioned. Things that I have worked really hard to build up. And again, I've received so much love and support through this time, which I'm incredibly grateful for. People speaking out on my behalf publicly, commenting publicly on my post, messaging me privately, because I think they know who I am and they know, one, my character, that I would do anything like become a drug cheat or do anything even close to it. I mean, I really care about my body. I do have a really healthy lifestyle that I continue to have today. And so to be able to receive that support is huge, but then also to be able to capture those raw emotions has been really big for me throughout this last year, because I can look back and be like, well, right now I'm in a great headspace and I'm good to go. But I mean, 2 weeks ago, I definitely was journaling about how tough of a couple of days it was watching my races happen and not being able to be there. But sometimes I think we can suppress those emotions, push them back, be like, okay, well, I'm just feeling it's whatever, like push it to the side, doesn't matter. But I think it is important to feel those things and to be able to reflect on those feelings too.
Truly, and be vocal about it.
Like
I
completely.
mean, that is so massive. And it's just not talked about enough. People are like, only I'm going through this. How can anyone else relate? You know, it's just like you talked about like the FCA, you know, and a Fellowship of Christian Athletes, how like you guys were all going through something and then you came together and talked about it. It's like literally group therapy at its finest, you know? So it's just being able to sit there with those emotions and be able to be vocal about it has been so massive. So I'm just also hoping that through this too, that other people, you know, who are going through these things are listening, you know, and know that you are not alone in these struggles with, you know, with what you're going through.
Yeah. And like, even outside of sports, like I said, your message and just who you are is so strong. Because there's one thing that you've told me, and I love this, is you're like, I know who I am and I know what I've done. So bring on the accusations. I'm going to tell my story and I'm not going to be ashamed of it. And that's one thing where I'm like, I have that mentality, and there's a few other people do, but a lot of people are scared of the backlash. A lot of people are scared to like stand true to who they are, and you're doing it. And that's where I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And I only have complete faith that good things are ahead of you. On that note too, is there anything like you would like to share with like our audience, or any message that you really want to like tell them right now before we kind of send this out to a close?
I would say there's a couple of things. I mean, the biggest thing is treat people with kindness. I know it sounds so cliche, but like you just said, and how I shared with you, I know who I am. Yeah. And while I've received so much love and support, I've also read some horrible comments about myself, about my faith, about my university, saying that I could have found this on the black market, saying that, oh, of course I did this, like all my success over my 18 years of swimming was all because of me cheating. Like just so many horrible things that people have said behind anonymous comments. And so just being able to treat people with kindness, because while I know what I was going through in the last year, a lot of people didn't. And everyone has struggles, and everyone knows thinks that they know everything that everyone's going through, but we really don't. And we just need to continue to treat people with kindness, to be able to be there for people, even when we don't necessarily know the why behind being there, but just showing up consistently for people, I think, is so important. And I guess another thing is, if anyone knows anything about Vidatastat, please let me know, because I'm still trying to figure this out and still trying to find answers. Those are my two biggest things.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was like the perfect ending. On that note, I also just want to thank you for being here with us. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the past 48 hours that you've been in LA with us. Thank you, Matt, for bringing this gem on our podcast.
I'm so excited.
No, me.
I'm so happy. I'm just so glad you and I talked to you about this over text. It was so funny. I texted Christine. I was like, we need to have Kensey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she'd say yes. And they immediately say yes. I literally texted like screaming, crying, throwing up. Like I was like,
Yeah.
she said yes. We're so excited. So it was like, and immediately that next week, we were ready to have your flight out here. And we're so
Thank you. I
happy.
was super excited too, because I've been able to speak about this on a couple of podcasts, but it's been very swimming centric. And while swimming obviously is a huge part of it, it's why I'm in the position that I'm in. There's so much more to me than swimming. There's so much more to my story than what I did in and out of the water. And so I thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to speak on the other aspects of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's what we're aiming for here, is we just want people to be themselves and we all get that genuine connection. So once again, thank you guys.
Yes,
and thank you
so
guys for
much.
listening. Yeah. Love you.
All right.